one thing I do make all the winners talk to me about is like, how would you describe what you do? Like you're describing it to your grandma, because I am essentially your grandma. Because I think part of all of this is like, we really want these solutions to be connecting to people.
I feel like TikTok and social media does get a bashing quite a lot in terms of the dangers of social media, but there are some positive elements to it as well. Namely, 1.5 million views of a dog playing in water.
I feel marginally hipper and cooler now.
Well, okay, maybe I'm like really just pushing TikTok too much. Maybe it's because, I view myself as a Kardashian of TikTok now, 1.5 million views. But
welcome to The Stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg, an environmental journalist and content producer specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy consultant, doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And today we're delighted to be joined by Kelly Trott, who's a VP of Deployment and Impact at Imagine H2O from the US. Kelly, thanks for joining us. Great to see you. Come in.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Will. Great to see you.
What do you think about our we actually kind of made a real effort today. Not that I'm saying we don't make an effort with Hawaiian shirts before, but Will sent me it said, Tom, white shirts, blue ties, get on it. I got a strict instruction beforehand. So.
I don't know if I've seen someone in a tie or a suit the last few months. So it's kind of a nice reminder of, what the office or workplace can look like.
We can clean up. I think that's the message to everyone watching.
I think that's still subjective, but yeah, we try our best. I actually put a jumper on because I'm in a co-working office and I just thought it looks a bit weird if someone's wearing a shirt and tie and shorts and flip-flops walking around.
Too much information, Tom.
Okay, really. No worries. Too much. Always too much. Well, all right, Kelly, thanks for joining us today. We're going to hear a bit about the Urban Water Challenge, really exciting program from Imagine H2O. We're going to talk a bit about the entrepreneurial journey and some of the trends that Kelly has seen, as well as kind of a TikTok famous dog. So we're going to come on to that later on, as well as perhaps Will's venture onto TikTok. So we'll save that gem for last. But Kelly, we always start with the origin story. And I think yours has a particularly nice arc back to kind of some of the areas you're working in now. So let's open up. How did you get into water?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think when I usually tell this, I'm like, oh, it's not the standard water path, right? Like I'm not an engineer. I don't have a PhD. I actually view this now as a more standard water path as I'm seeing, multiple diverse backgrounds, people coming into water, and I'm excited about that. So my story really started, I graduated college in the financial crisis and decided that investment banking was really the right thing to do. And I focused on insurance companies. So I got some really interesting experience on deal work of restructuring debt and M&A work on the insurance side of things. But I don't know, it wasn't the most fulfilling job in the world. And I had always grown up loving the environment and caring about that and didn't really realize that's a career that you can have. And I ended up meeting the head of the Museum of Natural History in New York City. And they kind of said, why don't you come work for us and try this thing out? So I did. And I love that experience. And eventually, I'm really a solutions oriented person. So I wanted to think through, well, how can we pull both of those experiences to help the environment? So how can I use the capital markets and investing and creative financing tools to work together with conserving, right? And so I went back to business school, and that led me on this journey of working with family offices, the Nature Conservancy, and foundations on kind of how do we do this? And I got very intrigued with how do you do it in water. What I learned quite quickly on the investing side is investing in early stage water tech, which is where I was kind of got that interest. It's quite hard, and hard for a lot of good reasons. And so for me, I really wanted to be closer to that entrepreneurial journey. And I met with the Imagine H2O team and really clicked with them. And so ended up at Imagine H2O. And I can go into a little bit for people who don't know what Imagine H2O is, if that is helpful.
I think so, yeah.
Kelly, could you, in terms of you know, what they're all about and where they started, which is fairly modest beginnings.
Yeah, I think Will knows our story probably best. And it's been 11 years now, and it was founded by two Harvard Business School students who really saw this innovation economy being built up around energy. And they're like, well, why isn't this happening around water? Because they viewed innovation as an underutilized resource. So they developed Imagine H2O as a nonprofit 501c3 with a mission to empower people to develop and deploy innovation to solve water challenges globally. And I think the develop and deploy in the mission statement is unique. Most people probably know us for our accelerator work, which is where we started. And that really focused on helping entrepreneurs, I like to say, get there faster, better, stronger, either like Kanye West, Daft Punk, whichever one you want to think through on that one. And we did it really well, right? Like I wasn't a part of it, so I can say that they did it really well. And at this point now, we have worked with over 140 entrepreneurs. But as we progressed, we really saw this opportunity that we were really tackling that develop side, and we were touching on deploy. But how do we like actually really integrate deploy into what we do? Which is where we started to develop this kind of deployment strategy around how can we use like small grants to unlock pilot opportunities that accelerate the adoption of innovation. We've also progressed on our journey of seeing that, you know, there's a whole world of solutions out there, and we need to grow our connections globally. So we are focusing on the Singapore market as well, where we are bridging entrepreneurs into the Southeast Asia market, as well as helping entrepreneurs in the region through our Imagine H2O Asia Accelerator programming.
Amazing. It's a pretty incredible position that you guys are at, actually, because you get to see so many different innovations and the life and the stories of so many different entrepreneurs looking to solve the wicked water problem, as you phrase it, Will. And I was moderating a webinar with Scott Bryan from Imagine H2O, and he called it the Innovation Riddle, which I hadn't heard before, but I love, and I'm going to steal it and use it as my own. I'm joking. But it's a great way that Scott phrased it, because if you think about it, and the panel was shaped around the Sustainable Development Goals and SDG 6, which is providing clean water and sanitation for all by 2030. And he was kind of saying, look, this is such an enormous challenge that we face. And clearly Imagine H2O can see the solutions out there, but sometimes the environment in which you have to help deploy those solutions isn't perhaps, you know, best open to receiving those innovations. But he phrased it much better than I just did. But I thought the Innovation Riddle was a great way to phrase it. Would you agree with that, Will? When you call it the wicked water problem, right?
Yeah, it's indeed perplexing, because if we just adopted scales what we had on the shelf, we could solve scarcity, quality, you know, access to, you know, sanitation, you know, and so on. But for some reason we're stalled. We're not stalled, but, you know, we're sort of our own worst enemy in a way, in terms of how we think about it. And this goes back, Kelly, to your origin story. I think we are part of the problem, you know, practitioners, and you can nod enthusiastically about that. You know, we're the problem, and need outsiders to look at it and say, well, you know, why don't you just do fill in the blank, or, you know, come up with a different way of funding and financing and new business models. So, I'm encouraged, because non-water practitioners are suddenly coming into the sector and asking that question. You mean you haven't figured it out yet? You got to be kidding, you know?
Yeah. But it's interesting as we have these discussions, right, that water seems behind in some ways, and rightfully we get that criticism, and I understand it. And so I've been really pushing, like, why is water change not a part of the climate change discussion in so many ways, right? Like we hosted, like, at the governor's summit, like, that water was a side event, and we're seeing this. But I was talking to David Festa of EDF, and he was like, well, if water gets paired with climate change, is that a good thing or a bad thing for the industry? And people are arguing both sides, which is, I don't know.
I think we should run with that, actually.
Okay.
So I'm so glad you brought it up. I struggle with the pure, or the, the saying, if climate change is the shark, water's the teeth, or something to that effect. Because suddenly every water challenge and every water solution gets enveloped under, a climate change strategy, and water was messed up before anything around climate change. And I think we run the risk of solving the wrong problems if it's suddenly only part of climate change. So I think there's clearly a Venn diagram that, there are outcomes in the world of water that are associated with climate change. But look, the Colorado River Basin has been over allocated and poorly governed for, well over 100 years.
Yep.
It's worse now, but we didn't get it right the first time before we knew anything about climate change. So I don't know. That's my 2-second rant.
No, and I would love to get into this further too. We're going to do something at SOCAP around this topic, just because it's so complex, right? Like how we're hearing our entrepreneurs being told, well, you should be adapting your marketing to being a climate tech, not a water tech, because investors are more interested in that, which is always tricky when an investor tells you to target something that an investor wants.
That's good advice. I think we should run with that one also. Say more.
Well, our view is when you bring on an investor, and having been on the investment side, like you have your own targets and your own kind of leanings, right? But as an entrepreneur and a really good leader of a company will know when to take advice and know when to say, this is my direction, and I shouldn't be just kind of embracing everything this investor says, especially if it's their first investment in water. And as you guys know, there's not a ton of investors that are totally full into that niche.
Right.
I always think from a communication point of view, when I'm looking for a story, a lot of the 2030 announcements, or even 2040, 2050, are based around climate pledges or carbon pledges. And then I have to look through for where water is part of that. And it doesn't, for me, get as much kind of headlines or attention, whereas it should, because as we discussed with this session with Scott, water is linked to every other 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Without those interlinked, if you don't get water right, SDG 6, it can impact education, it impacts healthcare, it has a knock-on effect. So it should be fundamental, but it's often sidelined in terms of attention, and which is frustrating. I think we can all agree that, right?
We do silos really well.
Silos within the silos. Yeah, because I tuned into your, was it the Swedish fish tank session that you guys did, right? Great name, by the way. I love it. I think there's too many Dragon's Dens. I've seen those done to death. The Swedish fish tank, I thought that was quite creative. But you said something like, it was a great comment. It was like, well, you have the silo of water, then you have the silos within the silos, and you have the urban water guys, the wastewater guys, the desal guys, and it's just like the silos within silos. So, and that's another topic that came up in that session with Scott, is how can we get people to communicate much better outside of their comfort zone and their silos.
Yeah, I think with the Urban Water Challenge in particular, we're seeing actual funders come in on the ocean side of things, who say that they're ocean funders. And it's really interesting. Over the last few years, we've watched multiple be like, oh, wait, so ocean pollution comes from somewhere. There's a source. So maybe we should be thinking about this all together. And actually, both of those funders are now reframing kind of their mission against just oceans. It's now water that they're focused on. So I think you're seeing a movement away from those silos. And I think we can go even further than that.
Yeah, that's really a positive change. Last year, I was on the scientific program committee for Stockholm World Water Week, and we were talking about that topic, which is, we've got the ocean people, and then we've got the freshwater people, and never the two shall meet. And it was like, what are we doing here? And that's an encouraging development. to hear that there's engagement and an understanding of really how everything is interconnected. And again, we're not just sitting in silos with our own, mission.
Yeah.
We're doing some work at the moment on the word resilience, and I've just come out of a session, a know-how session called the Jargon Busters, and completely different about whether the word resilience is a buzzword or if it's going to stay. And the overall perception was this is a positive word, because I think if you can have resilient communities, you can have social and human resilience. It's a good thing going forward. But this is the segue, bear with me.
Is this where you go to TikTok? Because
no, that segues at the end, just a bit early on that one. But an area where I think brings together different stakeholders is urban water and urban water resilience. And you mentioned your urban water challenge, Kelly. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that in terms of what the program is, some of the types of innovations you've seen in regards to urban water, and can also tell us the winner as well. See, I told you the segue was just a bit long-winded. I was going to get there, but
you're good.
And to be honest, it's actually a really good one, because we really focused on resilience this year with the Urban Water Challenge, and there was a lot of internal debate if that's too jargony of a word.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going with it for a lot of reasons, but internally we're working to define what exactly resiliency means for us. So I think it actually quite worked, that segue.
You're welcome back on the stream, Kelly.
So the Urban Water Challenge, for the past 3 years, Imagine H2O has run a program with 11th Hour Racing and formerly Blue Water to not just kind of, as I was talking about, develop innovators, but also to provide a path to deployment. And when we all initially came together, we were thinking, how can we rethink urban water challenges? And I think this is a really, really, really broad mandate, and it's set up that way on purpose, as kind of, we view it as we want the most people around the world to be trying to solve, as Will calls them, these wicked challenges. And we think that this is going to be needed, not just water focused people, but people from other industries. And so not just diverse backgrounds, but also diverse approaches, I think, is how we think of it through the Urban Water Challenge. Like, as Will was talking about earlier, like, we have the technology and know-how to solve a lot of these things, but oftentimes it's not just the tech, it's about merging innovative business models and kind of taking proven solutions from other sectors and bringing it to the water industry. So for us, that's kind of how we've structured the Urban Water Challenge. And it is a prize challenge where you get a grant to deploy in a city of your choice. But we really think of it beyond just a challenge, in the way that, like, we don't just want to give money and say that's it, right? To actually catalyze impact, we want to build the network around it. So making introductions to other cities that are very similar to the one they're deploying in, and having mentors that are very ingrained in those regions, like WASUP and the World Bank are two of our mentors within the program. And over the last 3 years, we've made a series of small bets around, in the form of these grants, and they've been quite successful. And I think what's really interesting to see is those diverse backgrounds of the different winners and finalists. I mean, you have people like Ari, who came from Silicon Valley and, was looking from the outside in on what's going on in water. Like, why can't people understand what's happening in their water inside their homes? And I feel like he was met with so many like, oh, well, you can't do that because, right? Oh,
Right,
but,
right.
oh, but. And instead of, us in water probably be like, okay, after the third but, maybe I should back off. Ari was like, no, I want to solve this. Like, I want to figure this out. And it was almost the fact that he wasn't in the industry, which has made him so successful. Go ahead, Will.
No, I was going to say, Ari for me is sort of the archetype of what needed to change. I mean, I met Ari at 10-10-10, and then, he became part of your program. He became part of the ABI 100 Plus Accelerator program. And when I first met Ari, it was like, okay, this guy knows nothing about water. And then it became a huge asset because he became relentless. And in terms of pursuing his business concept. So it sounds like you're seeing more and more of those types of folks come in. How come? And not to derail us from like who won the Urban Water Prize, but
No. I think people are seeing water, like the water crisis, as more real and more real, right? As we're experiencing floods, it's like, okay, this is really in your face. And I think that we're also having people all over the world who have been experiencing it maybe more than like I have specifically in the United States, like come up with these solutions because it's been, such a pain point, as we talk about, in their own lives. Like Daniel, who was one of the winners last year, grew up in Venezuela where he didn't know about the reliability of his piped water. It would turn off and they wouldn't know when they would turn it back on. And he really and his brother were a team that got interested in solving kind of how to deal with pipes. And they do a trenchless technology, but it's just interesting to see people kind of start adapting and shifting. And then you have people who are more traditional, like Erin at Storm Sensor, and she was an engineer who was saying, like, guys, the data in sewers is an issue. Like, why can't we do this? And you're seeing even people in traditional kind of roles in water switch over to the innovation side that are seeing these pain points and saying, I can actually do something about this. And I think what's fun about it is like the Urban Water Challenge and conversations like these show us what's possible. We're constantly talking about the negative of water, but in reality, there's a lot that's good that's going on.
Yeah, this reminds me that, or makes me think that really the characteristic is unreasonable people. And there was a book that was written years ago, The Power of Unreasonable People, and those are the people that change the world. It's not the people that say, well, you really can't do that. I tried it 20 years ago. Trust me, I got a white paper on it. It's the folks that just refuse to say no.
I heard that from, you mentioned Erin Rothman from Storm Sensor. I interviewed her because in terms of creating the Google Maps of the sewers, fascinating concept in terms of more data on urban water, stormwater. And that tenacity that you just mentioned, Will, definitely came through because she was talking about the challenges during the lockdown when, potential doors to investors were closing and what she had to go through in terms of just being completely tenacious to bring in enough investment to maintain cash flow in the payroll for the team and then everything kind of stabilized. But I think anyone else anyone who was perhaps a reasonable person to throw it the opposite way perhaps would have given up. So that tenacity, that being unreasonable, you definitely need that to be an entrepreneur, I'm sure.
Yeah, that Erin story in March was quite a story. I remember texting her about something else and she's like, Kelly, my round just fell through. Like, I cannot talk about this. We will talk about this tomorrow when we have a plan and ready to go. And look, now she's like raised her round and is, has a solid pipeline. So it's really interesting to see. And I think maybe, Will, you're touching on the unreasonable part. And it's also just, I think so many people coming into Imagine H2O are always like, it's about the innovation, the technology. I think for me, it's the entrepreneurs with their human experiences that are really actually changing the world.
Yeah, I agree. There was another, similar to Erin, there's a lady called Victoria Edwards who's heading up this technology in the UK called Fido. And we did a webinar with her and I kind of said, introduce yourself. And her first line was, I'm unemployable, which I thought was amazing. And I was like, what a fantastic induction. But another very determined, kind of had successes in other businesses, relatively new to water, but just looked at it a bit differently, which I thought was very interesting. So can you tell us the winner of the Urban Water Challenge? Maybe a bit about it and kind of what and why it won would be great as well.
Yeah, so you will be the first to hear off of our platform, but the winner of the Urban Water Challenge and the $100,000 deployment grant is Field Factors out of the Netherlands. And Field Factors, I was introduced to the CEO, Karina Pena, who is from the Dominican Republic. We got in touch last year around, we were on some workshop around water and she was telling me a bit about what she did. and we instantly connected. She has that kind of enthusiasm and excitement about her work that's just contagious. And I'll mess up her origin story here, I'm sure, but I'm going to try to do it justice. She grew up in the Dominican Republic. And what she describes there is that, water systems, the cities are always built around water systems, right? And unfortunately, in the city she grew up with, the water system was polluted. So everyone kind of moved away from the water, right? Like you didn't want to be near it. And she went to study architecture in Europe and saw, oh my God, in Europe, the water is a part of your urban culture. Like it truly is the most important part of everything you do. And for her, she was like, well, how can I pair my architectural background with water that I've just become so passionate about? And she and her partner, who are both architects, were like, okay, well, how do we integrate this in a way that makes sense? So for her, it's about, okay, there's a ton of rainwater in the Netherlands, although, as we were talking about earlier, there's a little bit of a drought right now, or was a drought. And how can we harvest that water and use it for drinking water or other uses later? So their solution is really a circular, I would call, solution around kind of rainwater storage and then use in urban areas.
So I think this is awesome. I mean, for a lot of reasons, one of which is you did not use the word blockchain, AI, fintech, IoT, edge computing. Kelly, this is really terrific.
Well, I did warn you guys, like I am not a technical person. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a PhD. So one thing I do make all the winners talk to me about is like, how would you describe what you do? Like you're describing it to your grandma, because I am essentially your grandma. Because I think part of all of this is like, we really want these solutions to be connecting to people too, right? Oftentimes when you talk about it, people are like, IoT, machine learning, and you're like, I don't get it. So I think a big part of what I want out of the work I get to do is connecting solutions to people, those human experiences. And Karina is a wonderful example of how to connect kind of her solution to people. And a big reason that everyone was so excited about what she's doing is that they're making a really interesting product to a pain point that now people are like, understand and get, and that she's able to describe what is their impact and kind of what is their vision for the future around SDGs.
Amazing. I think it's a great case where you combine kind of architecture and design with, functional engineering. And I did a tweet the other day because I interviewed the head of resilience for Rotterdam. And Rotterdam is kind of a leading city when it comes to resilience. Great guy called Arnaud Moliner. And he was saying that many years ago, the Parisian group from Paris came and looked at these water squares that were functional spaces that can store water, but also beautifully designed. And they kind of tweaked the design a little bit to turn them into kind of stormwater playgrounds for a lot of schools in Paris. So very aesthetically pleasing to look at, but in terms of storing that water, reusing it, it's kind of when you combine that engineering and design in one, that's just makes total sense and makes you think, why haven't we done this before,
Yep. And we might have to connect those two because the deployment project is in Rotterdam.
Well, there you go. On our breakouts webinar later this month, we can make that connection, right? So
yeah,
all links together nicely. Very cool. Very cool. So how are we doing on time? Yeah, we've got a little while left. And I think everyone is desperate to hear about this dog and TikTok, because you have an internet famous dog. Is that right? You could say?
I do. I have a 6-month-old puppy now who, at the beginning of quarantine, I thought, this is going to be fun, 2-week, like at home type deal. A month in, I was like, oh my God. And I started to download. My little sister is very hip. She's very cool. And she's like, oh my God, you're not on TikTok, Kelly? Like what? And so she and I downloaded TikTok. And it's a very interesting social media platform. If you haven't, I'd recommend checking it out. I generally use it for cooking recipes now and dog content. And I ended up posting one about my own dog that now has over 1.5 million views.
Wow.
It is my only post ever, and I think I need to get more into it, but a very interesting one that I would love to show you guys.
You know, what's the dog doing? Why did it go viral?
So what's interesting with TikTok is they have these sounds that people use over and over again, and the sounds kind of are like hashtags. So if you use a sound well, then it can get traction. So I use this sound about someone not understanding what is going on in someone else's head. And it is my puppy who is diagnosed as a water freak, which we can get into what a water freak is, but meaning like he's like kind of a little bit crazy about water, and he's just literally going like this in the water over and over and over again. So if you can't tell, I am a bit of a crazy dog mom. Yeah.
You know, this show is all about making personal connections, not all, but in part. So what's the name of your dog?
My dog is named Ripper because we're big backcountry skiers, and we hope that he'll rip down the mountain.
Oh,
that's a cool name. Yeah.
all right.
I think I'd quite like to have a dog called Ripper. And in fact, you know, I was never a dog person at all. And then about a year and a half ago, we went to get a cockapoo, which I think is a kind of a compromise on pretty cool, semi-masculine dog. And we came back with a toy poodle called Maple. So you can imagine me walking along, some 6'4" dude. It's like, oh yeah, he's going to have an Alsatian or German Shepherd or Husky. What is that? There's this little toy poodle walking by his ankles, but super cool, part of the family. She's not on TikTok yet though, but I think she, you know, that could be a new audience stream for her, maybe.
Yeah.
So Tom, what's the name of your dog? I feel so left out here.
Her official name is Maple, but she also looks like a kind of mini Chewbacca. So she's called Chewy. A lot of friends name her Chewy, yeah, like a mini Chewy. Mac Attack, plenty of names, kind of more nicknames than you'd expect. But yeah, I haven't yet subscribed. Well, people have sent me TikTok videos, but I've not actually created a TikTok account. I feel like it kind of needs to be done this year. It's kind of the thing to do, right? But Will, you have taken the plunge. You are now, Will Sarney is officially on TikTok, right?
TikToker.
Yes. Well,
what's your handle then?
I don't recall, which sounds like a deposition answer, but I do need to check, because Kelly, the first time we talked about TikTok, it was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. I've got to get on the platform before it's banned in the US. So I did. But right after this, I'm going to go check out my TikTok account, and I'll definitely find you, Kelly, and Tom. You know, we expect you to be on TikTok.
Okay, by the next stream, I will be on TikTok. Okay, that's a pledge. But wasn't there? I saw some news earlier. There's a dude on a skateboard drinking cranberry juice, and there was the music of Fleetwood Mac's. Was it Dreams? I probably quoted that wrong, but it was a TikTok video, I'm sure, which has helped put that song back in the international download charts. So someone kind of headlined it, the power of now TikTok in terms of bringing a retro song back to life, giving it a modern twist. And now everyone's like sharing this video, and then it means younger generations are finding out about older music. So it kind of, I feel like TikTok and social media does get a bashing quite a lot in terms of the dangers of social media, but there are some positive elements to it as well. Namely, 1.5 million views of a dog playing in water.
I feel marginally hipper and cooler now.
Well, okay, maybe I'm like really just pushing TikTok too much. Maybe it's because, I view myself as a Kardashian of TikTok now, 1.5 million views. But it is
got like a perfume line coming out. It's just all, it's all.
Right. What about the shoes?
But it is informative. And so we're going to try it out at SoCap. With TikTokers like bringing in controversial statements. I'm going to let you know how it goes, but you can learn things on TikTok, which I found interesting versus like an Instagram. So that's where I think the platform can be quite useful and engaging the youth. Like there is so much around, youth involvement there that I would love to harness that in water in some way. And I'm not sure exactly how, but I will keep you guys updated on what I find.
Okay. That would be great. I feel like I need a tutorial or two.
There's a great. Have you ever seen the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District on Twitter? They've done some TikTok stuff, but I think, and we had them on a know-how webinar, where they're probably the most creative, entertaining, funny, engaging water utility. It's quite a blanket statement, but if anyone's on Twitter, you've got to check them out. They're just so funny, and they don't often talk about, repairs to their sewer works, but they've got a following around the world. And they did this. I'm sure it was a TikTok video where it was quite funny that it was supposed to be a day without water, and put this banner up outside the building, and this dude comes in called Walter, and they said they did a typo on the banner. So why is there a day without me, a day without Walter? Oh, you got the banner wrong. It was amazing how they did it just within like the 30-second TikTok video. But it was a great example, I think, of what this sewer authority is doing, is getting a wider, more eyeballs on the issues of water infrastructure in an entertaining and engaging way. So I think that's it was a pretty cool example.
Yeah, I think I follow them, and they are always at kind of the top of my feed because they get a lot of likes.
They do, yeah. There's literally some stuff kind of in for water. It goes, I'd say, regularly viral. Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah. Cool. Well, we're at the kind of 30-minute mark. So, Kelly, really great fun to have you on. I think we've talked a lot from resilience to climate change and the placement of water, through to urban water challenges, through to TikTok and dogs and sewer authorities. It's been a whirlwind 30 minutes. So I want to thank you for your time. Will, any final insights or comments to close?
Yeah, my takeaways are, one, I need a dog. I need to get on TikTok immediately. But most importantly, I am just so encouraged by what you shared in terms of what's going on in the world of water and innovation, and how it's really just not technology. It's, sort of back to the basics in a way, and bringing in outsiders. So good to have another optimist on the stream. Things are good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Will and Tom. This was great to be here. I've been following along from the beginning, and you guys have been really making some awesome and fun to engage with content. So thank you.
Well, it's great to hear that you've been watching from the beginning and you still agreed to be on. So
and you're still watching. Yeah, I think you're still watching. It's like you didn't turn off after the pilot episode. Oh, those guys.
From bow ties to Hawaiian shirts, now back to regular ties.
There we go.
It's a sartorial transition, yeah. And we need to think about, as we gear up towards Christmas, Will, what we're going to do for that one. So. Oh,
Tom, we will not disappoint.
Okay, there's big expectations there now, so no pressure. Right, well, Kelly, thank you, and good luck to you and the team at Imagine H2O, and for the continued Urban Water Challenge. It's been a pleasure. And to everyone listening or watching, make sure you subscribe and follow on YouTube and all the other channels: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, all of the above. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Will.
Be well. Bye.